What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and tonight we have a fantastic episode in store for you. We are diving back into the world of Major League Baseball, and we got a lot to cover. We're going to be talking about the new Deadball Era across baseball, as well as Apple TV's presentation of Friday Night Baseball and the atrocity it has been so far. And to wrap things up, we're going to end up talking about Trevor's story and his abysmal start with the Boston Red Sox. It's going to be a great show. We're going to have a lot to talk about, but I am going to need a special guest along the way because it is going to be quite the night. So he's a familiar face. You've seen him on this show before. He's also, well known for his presence on TikTok. Has almost 70,000 followers now on the app, and he has great takes, great presentation, and is just amazing baseball analyst and commentator in and of himself. So without any further ado, please welcome back to the show, Mr. Joel Laflamme, aka Hey Kami. Joel, welcome back to the show, man.
It's great to be here, Brian. Thanks. That was
Absolutely.
a lot of fluffery there. Thank you. I feel great. I should come
listen,
on here more often. Boost my confidence.
I mean, listen, I've been doing some stuff at school. I've been, I've had to do some background on people. I have to get some more I have to kind of that fluff is kind of necessary. It gives the viewers. Well, here's the thing: it gives the viewers here who are new here a chance to really know about the guests I'm bringing on. Because while you have been a recurring guest in this show before, there could be some new guests that aren't maybe aware of you. So
Absolutely.
If you are a new guest on this show, please consider either subscribing or following, depending on what you're listening on. We're available on all streaming platforms, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. We're also available on our YouTube channel. And all the links to that can be found in our Instagram bio. They can be found at down.tothewire on Instagram. Again, at down.tothewire on Instagram. Kami, I saw you pointing at your TikTok handle, so I'll let you do a quick shout out yourself.
Oh yeah, that's it right there. Hey Kami, underscore. There's an under. Hold on, can I do it backwards? There it is. Underscore Kami on TikTok. Yeah, just general baseball topics right now. Haven't been making the videos normally that I used to because of the movie that I got going on. But there's a lot to talk about in baseball right now. Lots to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely discuss the movie that you're working on a little bit later in the show. But first of all, the thing I highlighted first that we're going to get into is the new Deadball Era across Major League Baseball. So for anyone who is new to kind of this story across baseball, let's take it back to about 2019, where hitters across baseball were incredible. I mean, you had utility players going opposite field by more than 40 feet on some home runs. Everyone became a power hitter in 2019, set records for the most home runs in a season, and was absolutely incredible. That then caused Major League Baseball to say, all right, everyone is now hitting, and basically because of that, power hitters are now going to lose some of their value. Obviously they're going to hit more, but if this utility second baseman can also provide me 25 home runs, then I'll take that. So Major League Baseball ended up saying, all right, we're going to use the juice ball, and we had the juice ball in 2019. Then in 2020, kind of COVID screwed with some things. But 2021, the first full season that we were back, we ended up learning that Major League Baseball, in fact, used two different types of baseballs. It was one of the juiced ball that we saw in 2019. It was whatever leftover ones that they were using, and then a deadened baseball. And Kami, from what I've heard from you is that they basically picked and chose, what games they put them in. Could you provide some insight on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of data that points to specific games. Maybe like the Field of Dreams game is a good example.
Yeah.
Balls were just flying off the bat in that game because that was a game that was nationally televised, had a huge audience. So why not try to put on a show there? That's a very scary concept. That is a very, very scary concept, especially now with this dead ball era, with the humidors, with the new ball that they brought into play. The fact that they have shown on previous occasions that specific games would get specific balls. What else could that mean? Could specific teams be getting specific balls? I know that a general group of balls is given to the umpire, but what I mean by that is are specific teams getting more of these balls, and their games all have juiced balls? How is that divvied up? How do you sit down and say, okay, this team here, does everybody get equal,
It's an equal playing field.
opportunity?
No, you got to wonder about it. I mean, a team like the New York Yankees would be much more inclined to get these juiced baseballs that are going to allow them to, just hit absolute nukes in Yankee Stadium. I mean, they're called the Bronx Bombers for a reason, but are the Kansas City Royals, a smaller market franchise, going to get that same luxury? That's a question that I think a lot of people have to ask. And now this year, it's gotten to the point where we had the two different baseballs, and that was a scary concept. But it seems that now as we enter 2022, baseball has completely just, gotten rid of whatever juice balls they've had, which, whether you like it or not, it seems like there may be a semblance of consistency now, but because of that, and because of that consistency, no one is hitting right now. The league batting average is atrocious. Typical guys that would really have success right now are really struggling. I think, Kami, you highlighted in a video that, some balls are traveling like, 40 less feet than they did last year.
Yeah. That was a little breakdown of ball flight in just Tropicana Field.
Yeah.
So it was a nice breakdown of just looking at one stadium and comparing ball flight this year to the previous 3 seasons, and seeing how, ball flight, you got 23-degree launch angle, 103 miles an hour. And last year it would go 405. This year it goes 376.
Yeah.
And you're like, to me, that makes me think of, you have to kind of redefine yearly what a hard hit ball is. How 95 miles an hour is defined as a hard hit ball. It's just like, I don't think 95 is a hard hit ball this year. I think 98, I think 100, between that range is what you were getting from 95 last year, what you were getting from 92 in 2019. And that's just like the inconsistency of that year to year is wild, because you're going to go into the off season and somebody's going to sit you down and say, you need more launch angle, you need to put the ball more in the air. And then you do that, and you practice that year, day in, day out, and you come into the season and you're hitting balls 97 miles an hour off the bat, and they're falling 15 feet short of the wall. And you're like, well, you told me to do this.
Yeah.
Like you're taking away the best possible outcome for a hitter, which is a home run. The most productive thing you can do OPS wise.
I mean, it's the most popular. It's the most popular thing among the fans too. I mean, obviously the famous quote, "Chicks dig the long ball." So
yeah, and like I like to see a diverse style of scoring in the game.
yes,
But the tinkering that has been done over the last 4 years is it's madness. It's the balls. You're changing the balls and you're bringing in humidors at the same time, while banning sticky foreign substance and not properly giving pitchers something to use on a league-wide basis that they can all agree on. Like, the balls are coming out and they're not rubbed up properly. You're getting some that are just dark. You're getting some that are white, and you've seen a lot of hit by pitches that, like, you're hearing that the hitters are complaining about the ball flight and the pitchers are complaining about the ability to throw the specific ball.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't, like, while the league OPS is at an all-time low since the year of the pitcher, right? Like, since they lowered the mound. Now, if all of these factors were going to happen, if they were going to do the humidor, if they were going to change the balls and make them more pitcher friendly and home run, cut down the home runs. If they were going to do that and they were going to allow foreign substance at the same time, foreign substance wasn't taken out last year, and it overlapped into all of the things that had happened this year. Where would OPS be? It would be like 630 league OPS. It would just strikeouts and no ball flight.
No, yeah. I know people are saying like we're in the Deadball era, and like the last Deadball era, from what it was categorized, there were 29 total home runs. So like, obviously we're not in a complete Deadball era. I think if you kept the sticky stuff though, we'd have something that wouldn't rival that, because that was just insane, but it would be the game of baseball would be in a much darker place than it already is.
Yeah, if like weirdly enough, the offensive production that you would see from those dead ball era seasons is very similar to this because of the dependency that we have on home runs.
Mm-hmm.
Where back in those days you would have 400 hitters. Well, not home run hitters, but guys hitting, Ty Cobb's hitting 400 with 7 home runs on the season, right? Like, so production was coming through consistently getting hits and being able to run on the base paths and doubles and triples and everything else that wasn't a home run. So really like more bunts, sacrifices, all that stuff. But the type of offense that they would produce in those eras is eerily similar to the production that we put up now. What is league OPS at? 680?
I think so, yeah.
680. Like,
I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but that sounds about right, just based on how low it is.
I feel like 2/3 of the teams are under 700. Last time I checked, there were 3 or 4 teams that were under 600 OPS as a team.
Wow.
That's like as an entire team, you're fielding 9 guys whose average OPS is 600.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's atrocious offense. And last year the fix was it was in your face. It was pitchers putting crap on their fingers and you just go like, look, they're cheating. Stop that. And it was built into the rules. Hey, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's not.
And they put in the checks, which, I think, has caused some problems. Obviously, we see guys like Madison Bumgarner getting tossed out of games for, and, even the umpire for that, kind of just raised his hand and was like, listen, I'm sorry, I messed up there. Like, I shouldn't have been like, kind of a jackass to this guy. So I'm sorry. But it's definitely been, it's definitely been a whole bunch of things going on. And, for anyone that isn't familiar with baseball or is maybe tuning in this episode and is going, well, what's up with, what do you mean MLB is able to tamper with the balls? Like, what's going to be the difference? It's a baseball. Like, what are you guys talking about? To maybe put it in another sports perspective, if you've ever played basketball and you've left a basketball out in the rain and it's gotten waterlogged, try shooting with that thing. It's not going to be as easy as it was when you first had it. Or if you've had a ball that's filled with too much air and as soon as you dribble it on the ground, it's going to have way too much bounce back. It's kind of a similar aspect to that as what, has happened with MLB. It's more on the side of, playing with like essentially waterlogged baseballs is what MLB is pretty much doing right now.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's the equivalency of it. I mean, obviously, they are doing some different things, with the manufacturing of the baseballs, and then the humidors as well is an interesting factor. For other people who maybe aren't familiar with the humidors, obviously, throughout this whole, dead ball situation, that's been a word that's been thrown around a lot, like humidor. And, even before the show, Kami, I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't too familiar with it. I understood that it was keeping the baseballs in a neutral environment and trying to get it in and trying to basically put teams on an even playing field. But you seem to have a greater understanding of it than me. Could you provide some insight on that?
Yeah. So like, it's funny. People have described it as they always, I think of cigars for cigars.
Yeah.
And this like kind of box that's about this big that you can look through that's glass on the top. No, it's like a walk-in fridge. It's this, think of a restaurant and it's this kind of walk-in fridge. They have racks of baseballs on, and it just keeps the balls at a standard level of humidity. It keeps it keeps the balls at a league standard, no matter if you're in Arizona or if you're in Colorado. It's interesting because it was used specifically in Colorado because the Rockies, I believe in 1999, had a team ERA in Colorado of 650. I think it was atrocious. They brought the humidors in and it dropped to 550. Took a run and like 1.2 runs off the board in ball flight. It was still Colorado. There were still home runs. You still get 14% more ball flight out in Colorado than you do at sea level. So you still got that, but it kind of leveled the playing field. just for that one specific place, because
it's in such an extreme area. I mean, just
yeah,
you're playing a mile high, so that's going to affect it, and it's just going to the ball is just going to fly more. I mean, I think baseball for the home run derby last year, they didn't have the humidors in place for the home run derby last year, and we saw what happened. I mean, like the balls there were absolutely just sent into orbit.
yeah, absolutely. And now imagine that the opposite effect happening now, and you taking the ball to Arizona and turning that, like, Arizona is a competitive team this year, because that's a hard stadium to hit home runs in when
Yeah.
the ball's not flying. You want to try to hit the ball to center field there. That's a tough task. And so all of
You
us,
typically have to have a lot of power to do that.
yeah. And but when you have when you have a ball that's kept in Arizona that's dried out and rockets off the bat, that those dimensions aren't so intimidating. Um, when you spread the idea of, when the humidors were, I believe, in 6 or 7 stadiums last year, now they're everywhere.
Yeah.
That is the equivalent of dropping the league scoring by a run 1.2 runs per game, especially now when teams are so launch angle centric, right? Like, and what you had mentioned about, the ball flight being completely different this year. It's been completely different in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and one season was shortened by COVID, and one had 2 balls.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've seen the other 2 seasons at the bookend of that have no ball flight and the most ball flight.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's, how do you explain that? For, like, gambling is everything right now. Betting is every single, you watch a sports game, it's gambling. You're affecting so much with that.
Yeah.
You've got that knowledge in advance. The Even building your team with that knowledge of, you're like, oh wow, offense is going to be down, I have to go after this type of player. And what that allows teams to do, specifically having that little bit of knowledge of how the season is going to be based on the offense that the ball provides. Like, the ball, you just never get it in football. There's no, oh, it's one of those years where it's a tossing year. It's one of those years where touchdowns in the air is up 30%. Like that just doesn't happen. It doesn't.
No, you either have the arm to throw the ball or you don't. Like
Yeah,
that.
and
You either have the ability or you don't. I mean, obviously in Denver, for in Broncos games, that it actually does have an effect there. I know at the time, the longest field goal in NFL history was set in Denver because Matt Prater kicked it and had, he had the ability of being a mile high. So he was able to set the record. But
yeah,
other than that, it's not really the case. Like, I mean, it's like, outside of the kicking aspect of football, there isn't really a similar situation.
yeah, there's no rocket puck season in hockey where, like,
No, yeah.
the slap shots are up 15 miles an hour.
It's not like the ice is faster every year, or in basketball, it's not like the ball's heavier or lighter. Like, baseball is the only sport that consistently messes with the actual product on the field. And
yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, you can say the NBA is rigged, but MLB has effectively changed their product every single year. And I don't like to consider myself like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but in terms of sports conspiracies, I kind of have an interesting one. And, obviously we mentioned you were mentioning COVID and the impact that had. Obviously that cost MLB a lot of money, especially based on the fact that, they only played 60 games in 2020 and they probably could have played a lot more. There's a chance they probably could have played at least, I think, 100 games, if not for disputes between the players and the owners. You then take that, and then you also combine the lockout this year. And I don't know. I feel like the owners would be disgruntled. They've probably lost some significant amount of money that they didn't want to, give up. And because of that, now they have to put this product in the field. Do you think it's a possibility that the owners, could have gotten to Major League Baseball and said, hey, we've lost some money and we don't necessarily, may have the funds to pay these guys the money we want to. If they don't have the greatest season, then, we can kind of lowball them on their offer.
Yeah, well, like think about being able to do that over the span of last year, this year, and the next couple of years, and the big market teams and the players that they would like. New York with Judge, that is a massive contract that they want to be spending in the 210 range, not the 350 range.
Yeah.
Devers, Bogarts in Boston. In Toronto, it's Bichette, it's Guerrero, it's Soto in Washington.
Yeah.
It's the owners coming up and saying, you got to make it so these guys ain't making $500 million. I can't do $500 million for one player.
Yeah, no.
And Trout has set that amount at what, 430?
I think it was like 420, 430, around that price. I can look up his contract.
So like Trout set that for it. That's kind of the previous generation's benchmark for
400, and then 426.5, so 427.
Yeah. So that's this new generation of stars want to cash checks that are bigger.
Yeah.
Soto wants to cash a check that says 450, $520 million. He wants to cash that check.
Yeah.
I think Guerrero wants that check. Bichette wants 250. I think Devers would want something in that range of 250 to 300. Bogarts probably wants to sign something similar to what Corey Seager just signed.
Yeah.
And that right there, the top 1% of baseball, those elite super players, and the massive jumps that they make over the 10 million and under players, right? Like you can imagine that the league consists of, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you can imagine that the league is 75-80% players making 10 15 million or under, right?
Yeah.
But that 15% that are making 15 million to 45 million, right? It's those elite players that you want to squash. If you can squash out those numbers for 2-3 years, you could save yourself. Like, you're a 250 guy, not a 350 guy.
Yeah, and at that point, you then reset the market back to essentially what I don't think you'll ever be able to get back to this point, but I think if the owners could get the market somewhere back to where A-Rod was getting 250, and that was like the benchmark, I think that would probably be the optimal place for them. Like if they could get it back somewhere towards there to where that was like the upper echelon for contracts, and they let the Trout contracts go, but if they could get it back towards somewhere like that where high end guys are making around that much money, I think that's kind of where they kind of want to be.
Well, just imagine that there's two camps of money making in baseball. You've got your pitchers and what they make, and you've got your hitters and what they make. So right now, a hitter has the potential of making, if Juan Soto goes off for the next 2-3 seasons, and to re-sign him is potentially $500 million. Okay. The top pitcher right now is Garrett Cole, making 320. So 320 to 500 is what you have to do now, is increase pitcher value.
Yeah.
Increasing pitcher value brings down hitter value.
Yes.
Right. And making it so that making the game relief pitcher heavy, like the game loves that, like more relief pitchers, they make $6 million a year. Mm-hmm. Have the game 80% relief pitchers, and then it will be cheap on the owners.
Yeah.
If you're so right now, like I said, it's that balancing act between who are the guys coming up who are going to make the most money, and are they pitchers or are they hitters? Well, Bichette, Guerrero, Devers, Bogarts, Judge, these guys are all hitters. There's pitchers coming up, but like DeGrom, does DeGrom get that much with the inconsistency that he has with his arm
and then the injuries? Yeah. I don't necessarily think so. I don't think that he's going to get that money. And it's just because most pitchers are only pitching every 5 days, if that. And, with these hitters, you're guaranteed they're going to be in your lineup. I mean, barring injury, I'd say about minimum 140 something games a year, if not more. Like, barring injury, that's kind of what you're expecting out of these guys. Pitchers, it's, maybe you get 30 starts out of them. I don't know, something around that range. So, I mean, that's kind of what you have to bank on a little more. So, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that go on with them, and the resetting of the markets, everything that goes on there. But before we move on from the state of the dead balls, I saw an article from John Heyman. It was over in the New York Post, and he ended up he was kind of labeling a couple different things about that what also could impact the baseball. He said that the dead in baseball is obviously an impact on these guys and what's caused this offensive lapse this season. But he also said that the short spring because of the lockout definitely affected guys. He said that there's young and live arms. Bullpens this year can have up to 15 different guys. So different guys are seeing. You could bring in this guy that no one knows about, and he's throwing 98, which typically is what you only used to see from like the upper echelon of guys. And now Joe Schmo is throwing 98 miles an hour in the MLB. So it's like, Jesus, like when can we get a break? So that's obviously a factor too. And then another thing he also talked about the humidors and the weather being kind of crummy in April. But another thing he mentioned too was that, there are hitting gurus and analytics and the Microsoft Surface tablets. It's all ingrained in every MLB team now. And, it's, it can help some hitters, but pitchers know how to attack every hitter now from a statistical standpoint. You don't go after a hitter just the same way anymore, where it's like, oh yeah, fastball first and go with the curve on 2 strikes. Like, teams know how to attack each and every hitter from a strategic standpoint now. So do you think that also impacts it, or do you think it still is more on the baseball?
Oh no, I definitely, I think that I've talked about having the expanded rosters and the added bullpen guys being an issue as well. The weather also was an issue.
Yeah.
Like you said, I see videos of guys on the daily throwing 103 in college, right? It's the arms are different. The way that you can pitch is different, and the fact that that if you blow your arm out, there's this magical surgery that will turn you back perfect.
And sometimes better. I mean, I know a guy, I've interviewed him on this show before. He's actually a minor leaguer in the White Sox organization. I believe he's, within one of their, I think he might be their number 12 prospect the last time I checked, maybe number 10 now. But his name's Sean Burke. And, I remember he is from my town, and he went to a private high school and threw around 94 miles an hour, or, threw like, 94, in high school, and then going on to college is, kind of is what he was throwing around. His senior year of high school, however, he tears his UCL and has to get Tommy John surgery. I think now he can sometimes get around to 98. He's now more consistently about at 96. So somehow after the surgery, he's faster.
So something that not too many people know that they do when they do the UCL is there's a you have the ulnar nerve that runs down your elbow, and it's usually on the inside of your elbow. And sometimes in the surgery, they'll actually move it to the outside of your elbow. So that ulnar nerve, this irritation that you get on the inside of your elbow literally gets pushed to the outside of your elbow. And then that strain is like cut down, like the amount of pain, the pain just dissipates. The pain that you get after the throwing is just cut down. That's exactly what happened to Tommy John, was that not only was his UCL torn, but the ulnar nerve that ran up his arm was like inflamed and had been worked over terribly from being on the interior of his arm and it being like rotated on all the time when you like rotate literally on that spot. So they moved it literally to the exterior of his arm, and then that pain literally was gone. And so you see this incredible improvement and this ability to pretty much destroy yourself as a pitcher and then reconstruct yourself in a superior way.
Yeah.
And
actually, I had no idea about that. The fact that they can move the nerve like that. I mean, from, all the videos I've seen, I see that they basically, drill some holes in your elbow, and then they take, whatever fiber, whether that be from your leg or, another part of, your body, wherever that comes from. And then they thread it through, and then they tie it, and they, make an artificial, tendon like that. I didn't realize though that they were able to push the nerve to the other side of the arm like that. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
and the way that I've seen it in the surgeries because I wrote the screenplay for Tommy John, and that's
Yeah.
specifically what actually happened to Tommy John was that they got literally in the middle of surgery and realized, oh wow, you got more than we actually. Not only as your UCL had blown out, but this nerve is been
Going haywire.
worked over terribly for the last 15 years, and I think we can position this differently so the effect is greatly reduced. And he never missed a start due to arm pain, and from 34 to 47.
That's incredible.
Right, and he won 164 games from 34 to 47, winning 20 games 3 times, like, and never ever dealt with arm issue after that. And I was like, wow, this surgery is space age. It is the greatest baseball sports surgery that exists.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's incredible. The fact that, I mean, just the fact that you can do that now with guys is just ridiculous.
Can't really do that for hitting, right? When you're 33 years old, they just don't make your legs magically have the spring that they did when you were 20. And
yeah, I mean, just the fact that that surgery was able to revive his career enough to where he could pitch to 47. Like you don't see that ever now. So I mean, that's incredible. I mean, obviously there's a ton of different things that go on there, but I think that concludes our segment with the Deadball Era. I want to move into another thing with baseball that's kind of been pissing a lot of people off, and that is, we all got them. We all got our iPhones. I mean, listen, I'm not gonna be shabby and say that I'm not grateful for the products Apple has gotten me, but one product I am not grateful for has been Apple TV's presentation of Friday Night Baseball. Now, when I heard that Apple TV was going to be, getting into the baseball sphere, I had my thoughts originally. I don't frankly like the fact that baseball is doing this idea where, they're blacking out games and they're, having on these, streaming exclusive platforms where I'm like, a lot of people critique you for having a dying platform and that, not a lot of people want to watch it. And I'm just like, the fact that you're going to then, tune out more fans and say, oh, let's do this and let's put it on a random streaming platform. I mean, listen, I think I have Apple TV, but I'm not really trying to go and watch it if I could watch a game on NESN or ESPN. I have like these classic channels, and I don't think that I mean, I can adjust and I can do it because I'm young and we can make those changes. But, say you have a grandfather or someone who, has been used to watching baseball their entire life. And it's like, all right, yeah, I watched the Red Sox on channel 6. I like, have you ever tried to sign your grandparents up for a Netflix account? It's a nightmare. And I know my grandfather is probably going to be watching this, so I hope you're doing well, Grandpa. But no, it's a nightmare. I mean, it can be terrible. So, I mean, I don't even know how to sign up for Apple TV. I think my parents maybe did it for me. So if you're telling me that, like, that you're going to have to sign someone else up for an Apple TV account, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. And it's true. It's almost akin to like tearing down an old stadium.
Yeah.
Like you have that connection to something, and why would you change the way that people connect to something when they've done it for generations?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me baseball is, especially in those summer months when baseball is the only thing going on, it always seemed to me like it needed to be the sport where, like, if something magical was happening, that the sports channel could tune over to it. If they had something less going on, they're like, oh, we're 6 innings into a no-hitter here, so we're just going to jump over to this baseball game. To me the broadcasts, at least for the Red Sox, you've got, who are your main guys? Is like Eckersley, doesn't he do games?
Yeah, you got Eck, and he's kind of hit or miss with some people. I think he's whatever. I have some friends of mine that absolutely hate Dennis Eckersley on a call, and they just do not like him whatsoever. Well, I mean, one of the reasons is you go back to that whole David Price situation that happened on the airplane, and a lot of my, one of my friends was very David Price, and that was very pro David Price in that situation, was like, Eckersley should shut the hell up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So, there's some things there. And, the other thing too, is that Eckersley had to compete whenever he was going in, it was usually because he was filling in for the great Jerry Remy. So that's why
Mhm.
a lot of people were like, yeah, Eck can do a decent job, but he's not Rem. And that
Yeah.
was the whole thing too. And when we had the tandem of Don Orsillo and Jerry Remy, that was as perfect as it can get. Like those two were like the perfect duo to have in the booth. I mean, I remember that's what made Red Sox games for me. It was the combination of Don Orsillo and Jerry Remy. And then, you'd have Eck come in here and there, and he'd be like the third chair, and that was all good. But when they had that, when you have a good broadcasting duo, it can really make your baseball experience. And, Don Orsillo and Jerry Remy did that for me. Dave O'Brien, obviously, I was, not huge on him at first, and that was more because Don Orsillo left, but he's done a decent job in his time there. I think he's, more than above average. I think he's a good guy and, decent announcer. Rem, obviously, rest in peace to him. He was a great color guy. And I know, yourself, Kami, I mean, you've grown up with some Blue Jays broadcasts. I know that I know they've been impactful for you. So, could you attest to a similar thing?
Well, yeah, we had Buck Martinez and Pat Tabler kind of for the last 20 years. And as a duo, um they entertain you through those soft moments of a game, those lulls in the action. That I love somebody who can tell you a story, who can bring you back to another generation. I love a historian in the booth
Yeah.
who
Nothing beats that when you see guys. I mean, like a Vince Scully moment where he's breaking down, a moment in, like you could be watching a game and he could say, "Oh, this reminds me of back in, about like right back in 1956 when I was watching the Dodgers at, a year after winning the World Series," and it's like, whoa, and he's just able to, bring things back just in perfectly. So that was always something that I remember. And it's having good commentators makes a broadcast. And that kind of brings me into saying that Apple TV does not have good commentators. They are
yeah.
atrocious. I mean, let me say this. I just having just all I need for I'm not saying I need you to be hometown, local broadcasts or, these big time shows or anything like that, but at least have a clue about baseball and the teams you're covering. The problem with Apple TV is that those broadcasters do none of that, and they are simply just a mouthpiece for the Apple brand. And that's all they do. And they always just talk about the new streaming show that's coming on Apple TV and all this. And I'm like, we have a game going on, guys. Like, let's put our focus into that. And, there are a couple examples of things that have gone wrong. I mean, one guy that we're going to talk about in just a second, Trevor Story, they mistook Trevor Story for Rafael Devers. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to be I listen, you can mistake Trevor Story for a couple guys, but Rafael Devers is about as far as you can get from Trevor Story. I mean, not only do they not look anything like, they also bat on the opposite side of the plate. So, right away, if it was just like, oh, I look down, I see a right-handed hitter, you think Trevor Story? No, like that, you can't even make that example. So they have no idea what they're covering. I mean, they also refer to, the players by nicknames. Some are like they just go by the nicknames. Some are either, right where, you call Bogarts Bogey and it's like, yeah, that's right. But no one calls Nathan Eovaldi Evo. No one does that. Maybe people in the clubhouse, but no one in Red Sox Nation calls Nathan Eovaldi Evo. No one calls him that. We call him Nasty Nate.
I'm just laughing that the Devers story, how you can compare those two to each other. Like one is a black man and one is a white man.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
mean,
like,
I just don't know how you could make that mistake. And then they've also just had like, outside the nicknames too. I'm nitpicking things from the Red Sox broadcast just because that's what I've seen and that's what got a lot of attention on my end. But I've heard, other complaints as well. Another thing I saw too was, Bobby Dahlbeck was going up to the plate and they in the Chiron graphic showing his stats, they referred to him as Robert Dahlbeck, which I've never seen ever. I mean, I get that, in MLB, what's kind of cool with these guys is that you can be professionally known by your nickname or your childhood nickname, like Sonny Gray. You're wearing an A's hat right now, so it kind of came to mind. His full name is Sonneth Gray. That's his name. And he goes by Sonny for short. And that's how everyone knows him. Whenever he pops up on a graphic, he's Sonny Gray. And that's how you know him. No one has ever in my entire life referred to Bobby Dahlbeck as Robert. I have never seen that in my life. So
like Roberto Clemente.
yeah.
You know,
Bob Clemente. Yeah. Just never seen that happen before. Nope, just not gonna do that. I mean, so I saw one Red Sox fan page, though. I think it might have been Red Sox Stats, who was, a very popular Red Sox fan page, and they ended up saying we're going to refer to him as this until he starts hitting.
Oh, that's great.
They ended up saying he's Robert until he starts hitting. I was like, honestly, might be needed, because the Red Sox right now, they might need some motivation.
Well, yeah, like I just on the commentary aspect of things, to find a baseball storyteller is like just to assume somebody is going to be good in the booth it's hard. It's usually 3 hours every day, 162 days. If you're going to follow a specific team, that you have to create content on the spot, and you have to keep people entertained in those moments. And it's, to me, those broadcast duos end up being so much of the game. And to just throw together, like the other example is that K-Rod podcast, which I just don't understand why that matchup would exist.
Can you allude on that for a second? So I know a little bit about the K-Rod broadcast, but you obviously have seen probably a lot more than I have.
I watched the Phillies Mets game, and I know it's supposed to be an alternative. I know it's supposed to be like the like the Manning broadcast, like you had said. And
it's kind of like the Eli Manning, Peyton Manning broadcast, which was a hit last year. I think they got renewed for 3 to 5 more years because it was such a good hit and everyone loved it, and it was just a good alternative, and it was awesome. But I don't think Michael Kay and A-Rod, one of the most divisive players in the history of MLB, is necessarily the way you want to go for a broadcast. I mean, I think, regardless of, where I stand with A-Rod, I think that he's turned his reputation around. I can understand the idea of having him. And listen, I get it. But Michael Kay, that's where you lost me. I was like, oh, if you got like A-Rod and then you had Ortiz as the juxtaposition, and you had them going back and forth, and you did something like that, especially play that up in the rivalry games, that could be awesome. Or, just trying to think of another guy too, that maybe you don't have to have it as Red Sox Yankees every single Sunday, but
I was going to say, why do you even like I get A-Rod has redeemed himself, but there's just something about A-Rod that is always felt.
It's always felt
so
fake
to me.
Yeah.
Fake at the same time, right? And it just does. It feels like he's putting on a face so that you vote for him to get in the Hall of Fame, and you got to like him now. He's playing the political game. He's kissing the babies, and it's just like, oh, you did a lot of stuff. You did a lot of bad things for a long time, and now that you have to kiss babies, you kiss babies. Oh no! Why don't we just get somebody whose reputation isn't in any way bad and doesn't have to redeem their reputation? Why not just start with somebody who's everybody loves? Like you said, David Ortiz is like the perfect example of somebody that everybody loves. And weirdly enough, Ryan Howard came on the show because it was a Phillies Mets broadcast.
Yeah.
And Ryan Howard had me captivated because he took over the show and just started talking about baseball and started this, that. Oh, they're going to do this. And I'm like, oh, Ryan Howard's providing some really interesting insight here. And then he went away and they brought in Hank Azaria, and Hank Azaria is great because Hank Azaria would be an amazing broadcaster.
Yeah.
Like somebody who could be funny, and you put that guy, you put Hank Azaria with he could do Mets and he could do Yankees, and I wouldn't mind him doing either. And I would never mind him doing anybody's broadcast. He could do the old fashioned ball game call. Oh, down the line, and do that thing that he does so great.
And that would be great. And that would be great on a secondary broadcast, because you get that humor that, maybe some of the old heads wouldn't be too big on. You get that on the other broadcast, and it's like, all right, oh yeah, like here's the alternative. And then you could have him with a player example. And I think bringing on those, another part of the broadcast, those broadcasts, which makes them a success, is those guests. Now, Hank Azaria became like a full-time guy. That's a different story. But, you mentioned Ryan Howard, you mentioned Hank Azaria. and that's great. But then I think you also mentioned like they brought on like Matthew Broderick for
Oh,
a thing, and that was like
that
just a
was
train wreck.
tough. They went and they did, first of all, in the 8th inning for 8 minutes, they went away and they did a how A-Rod would change the game segment for 8 minutes of the game, not in between the innings, not like cut out a commercial break and
Yeah,
have A-Rod talk between the commercial break. It was like the game came back on, and instead of it being in the 8th inning, it was A-Rod saying, these are the changes we need to do to baseball. We need to put 2 guys on each side of the infield and at least 1 foot on the dirt. And we need to have, I'm like, yeah, the shift's banned already, dude. Like they already talked about that. And he's like, we need to make the plate 4 inches wider on both sides.
that's
And I
gonna
was
make
like,
problems with hitting worse.
I was like, well, what? And he like showed this new weird plate that is like completely not a home plate. It's just this weird wide, double garage now. And they took 8 minutes to do that. Then they came back and sat down, and runners were on first and second with none out. And they're like, Matthew Broderick's here now. And Matthew's like, is this going on right now? He's not even clued into what's happening. And a ball gets hit to the gap, 2 runs score, and nothing is, they haven't said a word about any of this. None of this has been communicated to the fans. This isn't important to talk about. Let's go talk about other things. Let's make segments in a baseball game that isn't watch. And it's like, they didn't even put up a picture in picture. It's not like there was this little like, oh, at least I can just focus on the game and tune these guys out and just like look. There was, and they had pictures in picture going on the entire game because the entire broadcast is in picture. You're watching the game with, this segment. I don't know, try to put it, this part of the screen here, I can't do it, is covered by the broadcast of Michael K and A-Rod all the time. So you're getting 20% less baseball. And then a guest comes in, and then the image shoots over, and another picture-in-picture screen opens up, and now 60% of your image is the baseball game, which they're not talking about, and they'll walk away from.
And that's the thing too. What I also saw with the K broadcast is like for some periods of time, like they just didn't talk with each other, and like it would just be utter silence too. So like it's not. That's the issue that baseball is having right now. Is like these alternative broadcasts have been proven to work. I mean, the Manning cast did it perfectly. And, I surprisingly, Peyton's always had that, has always had that demeanor. He's always, been up and, able to do that. And then Eli actually was kind of a good foil to that because he kind of can bring maybe not the more cynical approach, but I don't know. I feel like he can sometimes be more real in certain situations because, he has the 2 Super Bowls, but he's also, dealt with a lot more and, didn't have, as much, natural success and, had some tougher seasons and, dealt with some things there. So I think it was a good foil. And then you just compare it to baseball where it's a nightmare. And then, with the Manning cast, they had, I think they had Tom Brady on, they had Pat McAfee, who is always a star when you bring him on. And then you're just bringing in different guys each week. And, they were all entertaining, with baseball, especially if your broadcasters aren't, those broadcasters aren't good, and then your guests aren't good, it's going to be a complete fail.
Yeah. And I don't know, what I've always like Manning, the Manning broadcast brings insight.
Yeah.
Right. I love insight.
And that's the
I
thing.
feel like Joey Votto is a prime person to take over that. He has great personality. He has great insight. He's an incredible hitter. Everybody likes him.
Yeah.
Right. That is the guy to take over. Like I will watch as soon as Joey retires and they want to do the Votto broadcast. I will watch him, and they get a great guest host with him. Like that's somebody that is universally loved beyond. You don't hate the Reds.
No. Yeah.
Who sits there and like, is he on the Reds? I can't like a Red. It's just they're so there's a very unthreatening team to anyone. So that's a perfect guy to have come in and grab the baseball audience for the next 20 years and put somebody nice beside him, and then I will gladly tune into that than opposed to I don't know why you would grab Yankees.
Yeah,
I don't know why you would grab.
That's the thing. That's the thing too, because you'll have a great portion of people that might love that, but the rest of the baseball world is absolutely going to hate that because the rest of the baseball world hates the New York Yankees. Like, that's the way it works. So I don't understand that. Like, and if you're just trying to get Yankees fans, then just put that on the Yes Network. Like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. And that's the thing too. The problem with baseball obviously is that, while they have a lot of problem marketing their players, a lot of their players, aren't going to be as animate to like come forward and, do like these press tory, kind of showcase things that, maybe an NFL player like the Mannings would, like maybe Votto would do something like that, but A-Rod's probably the only guy that's going to be willingly, up to do something of that nature, because that's just kind of the stuff that he wants to do. He wants to go out and promote himself. Maybe you want to take a more favorable person like Derek Jeter. He's it's weird because he became an owner of a Major League Baseball team, but somehow became a recluse in the process. I mean, you rarely hear from a guy like Derek Jeter anymore, and Yankee or not, he's very well liked. But so I think that's the issue too, is that a lot of MLB players, once they get out of the spotlight and they're done with their playing career, they kind of just fade back into society, and then they'll come back every now and then.
I'll give you one more name. What about Verlander?
I could like Verlander.
I think Verlander again. I think.
What about Ken Griffey
universally
Jr.?
Liked? Well, yeah. Honestly, I would sign up for that. He's somehow associated with Manfred right now. He works under Manfred, which I'm like,
so yeah.
I'm like, don't do that. You're hidden under the outhouse. That's where they put you. They put you with somebody literally shitting on your head. Like, just stand in front of the game, be the guy that everybody loves and will always love. I would love to hear him do broadcasts. Yeah, and Votto, Verlander would be really interesting from the pitching perspective. Yeah, because when do you get? He was on the verge of a fourth no-hitter. Like, when are you going to get? And he's got that. Kate Upton. I'm kind of a
superstar.
Yeah, without ever having the past of A-Rod behind him. So that would be an interesting pick. I don't know if you'd want to do it, but
yeah, no,
I'm sure he would have a lot to offer.
Yeah,
in the vein of a Manning.
Yeah, no, I think you can make a good. I think you can make a good bid there. I think that could be something to definitely take a look at. Obviously, the broadcasts have been very contentious. Things are kind of interesting there. One thing we mentioned was the mix-up on Apple TV's part, the mix-up of Trevor Story and Rafael Devers. We said we were going to get to Trevor Story, and we're going to do that right now. My goodness, Trevor Story has just been atrocious since he's gotten to Boston. I mean, he's hitting 206 right now. I believe his WAR is negative 0.3. I believe is his current WAR. And I'm not a big WAR guy. I don't like the statistic because I'm just like, it's wins over replacement, and part of me is always just like, well, who's he replacing? So I've never really liked that stat, and it can sometimes be arbitrary depending on who he is typically replacing. But he just flat out has not been good since he's gotten to Boston. And some people like yourself, Kami, had kind of predicted this. There were some things going on there, but it's been a lot worse than people have thought. I mean, initially, why did you think that Trevor Story was going to struggle out of Colorado?
To me, it was the numbers. His batting average away from Coors Field against righties is like, I think his OPS is 700. He bats about 225. The numbers were kind of ugly in that situation, and I was like, well, his away numbers against righties become all of his numbers against righties when he leaves Coors, when he plays for a different team. He doesn't get, and the massive boost that he has is when he hits lefties in Coors. It's like, that's when he's at his best, is facing left-handed pitching in Coors Field. And the difference between the two is it's really, really, really staggering. I feel like he's hit two doubles this year that would be home runs. They got gobbled up by the Green Monster. So like, he's only at 1 right now, but he should probably be at 3. He's usually incredibly slow starter.
But even if he was at 3, he would still have this batting average. I mean, it would still go in the books as a base hit. Like,
yes, his batting average isn't up. His OPS is slightly up. His slug is slightly up. But yeah, like to try to like calm it down a little bit and the worries a little bit is April, May are usually his worst months.
Yeah.
In the middle of the season, his batting average usually jumps up 20, 30 points. His slugging comes up. All by September, October, he's playing. Well, not very rarely October, but
Unfortunately,
August,
with
September.
Colorado, yeah.
Yeah, August, September, his numbers are doing usually 30 points higher on the batting average standpoint. But yeah, just the fact that his numbers outside of Colorado are staggering, and that the Humidors followed him out of Colorado as well. So
Yeah.
he left, and the Humidors followed him to every single stadium he plays. So it's like this double, weight on Trevor Story's shoulders right now. Is not only is he out of the place where he absolutely smashed baseballs, he's going everywhere else. And the thing that actually slightly impeded him in Colorado has followed him to impede him everywhere else he goes. So it hit him twice as hard, and yeah, it's not looking so great right now. I feel bad, but to me it was like, everybody messaged me when I put out. I'm like, no, Trevor Story's like a 1-year guy to me. He's the guy that he has to put up a 1-year Marcus Semien type season in Toronto for me to sign him long term, outside of Colorado. And everybody said, no, Chaim Bloom, he's the smartest guy in the universe. And I went, okay, the numbers don't say that it's that great of a brilliant move, but we'll see. Maybe I'll be proven wrong over the next 5 months, but
yeah. I mean, we've seen so far, and it's been a mess. And listen, when I went on a friend's show, and I was at the St. Patty's Day parade in Boston. So let's just say I wasn't in the perfect frame of mind. But I said something to the likes of, oh, all right, Chaim Bloom is at least doing something in the event that we lose Xander Bogaerts. And I said, at least we're doing something, and we're not going to just let Xander Bogaerts walk for nothing. I could at least appreciate that. But what I don't appreciate is the fact that, Chaim Bloom went into the season thinking we were just going to be able to go out and repeat what we did in 2021. The issue with him is that I think he just thinks that we're just going to be the Tampa Bay Rays and things are going to just work out that way. And I'm like, we have the money and we have the funds to go out and get guys. Thank God we got a guy like Trevor Story at the price we got him. I mean, it was kind of a steal, but we actually need to, put a decent team together now. And that hasn't happened. And, obviously Boston's been in a terrible rut so far. So, it's just hasn't looked too good. So I don't know. I'm not too happy with Chaim Bloom right now, just to say the least.
Yeah. Well, in the last 5 years, like Red Sox shouldn't have to say goodbye to the players that they love.
No.
You guys have a franchise where you should be able to build a winner and maintain the love affair that the fans have with the players, right?
I mean, here's the thing. Mookie Betts, I kind of understood because we were in a difficult contract space, and it was a difficult time. And I know that Chaim Bloom was brought in to trade Mookie Betts. That was his first move when he came in here. So, while it pained me and I didn't necessarily like the trade package initially, I understood, and I was like, you know what, we did what we had to do. So I could understand that. But the fact that it's now going to possibly turn into the fact that we lose Xander Bogaerts, and then Devers is Devers is questionable.
That's what scares me.
That's what scares me too. And I'm just like, all right, I could understand the idea that Betts was going to be at the door. We were in a terrible place financially, and that's why we brought you in, Chaim. But the fact that it's now gotten to the point where we're now going to lose the 2 other star players that we had, I thought the idea was, all right, Betts was just in another level. He's going to leave, and we're going to build around the guys that we have. I was like, you know what? I don't like it. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow. But if that's the road we're going to go down, Chaim, let's do it. I don't like the idea, though, that it's now, but don't worry about Xander Bogaerts. We got Marcelo Mayer. He'll be there in 5 years. Yeah, great. He's 18. I don't know what he's going to be. He could be a stud, but I know what we have in Xander Bogaerts. And And the period of time when between Xander Bogaerts and Nomar Garciaparra, it was a barren wasteland at shortstop. We were mixing in guys left and right for 10 years, and we had no idea what we were doing. So the fact that we actually have a guy like Bogaerts, who's been a staple of our franchise for this past decade, it's been pretty nice. I don't necessarily want to go back to those years where it was just like, yeah, we got who'd we used to get? Who'd we used to get? Marco Scutero or different guys like that. Would we just throw out there? I don't necessarily want to go back to that. Micah Viles.
I think there's this kind of concept around baseball that for some reason Xander doesn't get put up in that absolute upper top 3 echelon of shortstops. They always do a top 5 list. He's always, 8, 7. They're like, oh, his defense is suspicious. I'm like, he's the most consistent hitter. He's so consistent.
It makes up for the defense. Yeah, sure. He's not diving all over the yard, but he's listen,
healthy. He's consistent. Yeah. He produces in the playoffs. Like I love Xander Bogaerts. I think he's sensational. He's 29, and I would be doing everything I could to block him up to 37, 38 because he's just also it's the connection that you have with a guy named Xander Bogaerts in Boston, right? Like that's perfect. That's ideal. Like people just want to say that name.
Absolutely.
And he plays shortstop. He hits in the top 4 spots in your lineup. He could hit any of those spots depending on what you bring in around him. He could be leadoff. He could be 4. He could be 3. He could be 2. He's just a great player who if the fact that you have that Devers and Bogaerts are a risk that you could lose potentially both. It's like you said, Mookie makes sense as long as you look at the 2 of the 3 players and say, we got to keep 2. It's these 2. We can make up for it. We can trade him. We can.
And up until now, that looked like a decent move because Devers has kind of emerged as his own guy, and so is Bogaerts. Obviously, Bogaerts is kind of taken off since he's been there, and then Devers just people really think that he's going to take off this year. So it was like, all right, that might be working itself out. And like the thing with Devers not being a good defensively, listen, I get that he's not like. I get that he's not, prime Andrelton Simmons, like where he was just all over the place defensively and was able to be just a wizard on the field. But he's not a butcher. I mean, he can make the basic plays, which is kind of all we necessarily need. And what's good about that is, if you're trying to lock a guy up till 36, 37, which is kind of what you were getting at. I mean, those defensive skills aren't necessarily going to go away with age. Like the defensive skills of a guy like Andrelton Simmons, where he could just do all those, where he could just make these crazy diving plays and have all this athleticism. That does go away with age. That does eventually deteriorate because you're not able to move like that. Xander Bogaerts being able to, just take the classic ground ball, throw to first, and then be a great hitter on the side. That has a much better trajectory to last longer.
Yeah, and it has 2 World Series rings connected to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Devers is 25. He's an incredible bat at 25 years old, and slight incremental improvements till he's 28 and in his prime. I see stuff like I don't look at a 25-year-old player who can hit number 3 in your lineup and go
expendable.
That defense isn't so great, and you're like, well, that's it. Like that can be worked on. Like the incredible eye, the hand-eye, the bat to ball skills, the power, the left-handed bat at third base. Like the fact that you're getting that type of production at your third baseman, it's okay. That's a key to build around. You have to look at your pillars that you can build a franchise around, and a team that doesn't need to penny pinch. You're the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah. I mean, that's what gets me too, is the fact that we are doing this. We are being like so cheap, and we are kind of playing like that. That is kind of what gets me there. So let me interject. Like for Trevor's story, right? That's
160 million was what they gave him.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some way that the Red Sox could have found a competent second baseman this season and said that money goes to Devers and Bogarts? Like, this is money that we're not gonna allocate 25 million, 27 million a season to Trevor Story for the next 6 years when that should be Bogarts and Devers money.
I mean, I sure would like to think so. I think you could have gotten maybe a guy for like, $1 to $2 million, put him in, just have him be a defensive stopper. That's all we necessarily need, and kind of go from there.
Like, couldn't you make a deal for like Whit Merrifield?
That's been a deal that's been talked about for a while.
Like, he's hitting like shit. That's another guy who's hitting probably just as bad as Story was. But at the beginning of the year, to me, that's like, okay, he's a veteran guy. He's going to give me consistent at bats. He's got an Iron Man stretch of games played, so I know he's going to be healthy. I get a consistency out of that. Like, to me, that seems like the move that I would have made to maintain the short-term success without sacrificing the long-term future.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, one thing I've heard, which is one thing that was rumored, and this is actually a guy that you've had some personal experience with, Joel. It's Tony Maserati from Felger and Maz. Yeah. So before I get into his prediction, I don't know if we discussed this on the show, but I remember I was in work one day. I work in athletic communications at Bryant University. And, on the job, you're, on a laptop, you're doing, writing up game reports, you're doing game notes for teams and updating statistics. And, when you're doing it, you can kind of like listen to different things. So I was, just bouncing between, different channels. I was listening to Pat McAfee's show, different stuff like that. And eventually I was just like, oh, I'll just flip on Felger and Maz, see what's going on. And all of a sudden it was the middle of, the playoffs between the Boston Red Sox and the Houston Astros series. And lo and behold, Felger and Maz, they end up playing your video clips on the show, and they ended up calling you a John Boy like ripoff, or they said something
times.
Yeah, and they referred to you as John Boy or something like that. I think even when they had you on the show, they called you Hey Tommy, because they just couldn't. They're just kind of ridiculous like that. But it came from them. And Tony Maserati, which was the guy that you did have some interactions with, he ended up saying that something he could low-key see was, Heim lowballing guys, but not necessarily Heim lowballing these guys, but not necessarily based on their position. What he predicted was it was kind of more of an extreme situation, but he ended up saying, all right, Trevor Story could move over to shortstop next season. And, you got him for a pretty low position for shortstop, and you're just going to have him there. You rested him at second base for a year. You got his elbow healthy. Now he's going to go back to short, play the position that he's played for years. That was something that was rumored to happen because during a spring training press conference, Trevor Story kind of had a slip up and said, yeah, I'm ready to play second base this year. And people were like, this year? Like, what does he mean by that? So a lot of people are like, all right, Red Sox probably made a backroom deal and said, listen, you're going to be the shortstop, but just do it for this 1 year. The other idea after that was that Xander Bogaerts would move over to third base, which is a position that he played back in 2013 during the Red Sox World Series run. And the Red Sox would basically pay Xander like a third baseman, which is usually slightly less than a shortstop. So they would do that. And then from there, they would then take Rafael Devers, move him to the DH slot, and pay him like a high-end DH, which obviously pays a significant amount less, and then cut ties with JD Martinez. So that was something that he predicted. Do you think that's something that could possibly happen?
Oh, that seems like
that seems just, it feels very Heim Bloom to me. That's, and it's a take that stuck with me, and I've just constantly been thinking about it.
I don't think Devers is signing up to take low end money as a DH for a team. I don't think he wants to either. I think they would probably make him the highest paid DH in the league, and by a significant margin. And I think they would still promise him some games at third base. But Devers is more of a defensive liability at third base than a guy like Xander Bogaerts is at shortstop. He does have his issues there. Yeah. I just like when I look at Devers, I see a guy who fancies himself along the lines of Soto and Guerrero, and looks at those guys as his like personal peers and competition at that age bracket. And I don't think shifting him to DH is is something that he's going to want. Like I could maybe see him moving to first base, weirdly enough, but
I would say that, but unfortunately we do have a guy coming up in the system
it's true.
Tristan Casas, who I think the Red Sox are really big on. We might see him this year.
Yeah, I just don't see Devers coming off the field. I just don't see him ever wanting to come off the field. And it just seems like a really interesting shift on all of those players to try to like lower their value and get them to stay long term.
Yeah.
Because like,
I mean, it's an interesting position. I don't necessarily know how I feel about it either, but there's a lot of things that go into that. So obviously, talked a little bit about the Trevor Story situation there. Very interesting topic as well. But we're getting close to wrapping this show up. And before we do, something I hinted at earlier in the show, Kami, was the state of your movie that you're working on. So saw a little TikTok update that you're doing there. What is kind of the latest with your movie right now? Just kind of some brief little synopsis.
It cannot be brief.
Well, okay. As brief as one can make it. As brief as
one can make it. So we're 18 months into it from once we started like piecing it together at the very beginning. We have 2 days left of shooting. Editing has begun. It's amazing because what it is it's half of the movie is a narrative structure, a classic story that's being told normally through actors, and then the other half is kind of the actor's journey into getting the roles that they're playing in the movie. So whereas half the film is storytelling and fully produced and cameras and editing and effects and all that stuff, the other half of the film is you kind of watching as the actors slowly progress and gain those spots in the film over auditioning against 1,000 different people, and at the end we end up having a 12 episode series. We end up having a short film, and we end up having the first act of a film as well. So it ends up being all these different concepts in one, and the production cost has been, because of all the tricks that we've used on using the audition footage and everything, it's made it so that we've been able to shoot this thing for a very low price point, thus making it rather appealing for a streaming site or a streaming service to be able to make multiple seasons of it, pay out so little and have so much back end content. But yeah, 2 days left of shooting. We're moving into editing now, and it's going to be great to be able to actually show people what this has all been about.
That's fantastic to hear. I wish you the best of luck with that moving forward. Unfortunately, Kami, we are now down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up what we talked about in this episode and send you guys on your way into the weekend. Obviously, only did one show this week. Sorry about that, you guys, but finals was kind of crazy, so wanted to power through that and then get going. So we ended up welcoming on the one and only Joel Laflamme, aka Hey Kami, onto the show. We talked about the state of the Deadball era in baseball, as well as Apple TV's horrific broadcasts, and just a commentary on broadcasts as well. Commentary on commentary, kind of an interesting topic there. But and then we finished things off talking about Trevor Story's abysmal start in Boston. I mean, just frankly has not been up to snuff with what I would want to see from him to this point. So it was a great episode. Kami, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate the episodes where you do. It's a blast.
Yeah, I love coming on every time. It's always so fun to talk baseball, and time just flies by.
Yeah, no, it's
Thanks,
crazy.
man.
I mean, it's amazing. So we thank you guys for tuning into the show. Again, I hinted at it, I talked about it at the beginning. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow wherever you can. Do that through the links in our bio on our Instagram. That is at down.tothewire. And from Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Joel Laflamme, aka Hey Kami.
And we will see you guys next time. Take care. Have a great weekend, and peace out.